So the title for this sermon is Old Friend. And you know what I am talking about. A friend for many years who has been with us on our journey of life. An old friend is someone we can confide in, tell them our woes, challenges, celebrations. They're present with us in mind, body, and spirit. They're someone we can trust. I have always been amazed at people who have an old friend from early childhood and how both persons took the time to develop this long-term friendship. I have two long-term friendships, old friends, which have been going on for over 30 years. I have old friendships from previous churches that I have served in Harrisonburg and Alexandria. Being your pastor for 22 years, we can now call ourselves old friends. I know what it's like. You support me. You love me. You know my mannerisms. You've been with me through my medical challenges. You have forgiven me of my many, many, many mistakes. And I've led you as pastor. Renovations, new ministries, baptism, confirmation, deaths, births, marriages, COVID, splinter and separation of our denomination. I would like to suggest for us today to look at Psalm 23 as an old friend. As people of faith, Psalm 23 just shows up in our lives when we need to hear its message the most. Psalm 23 is an old friend that many of us can say without the printed words. Psalm 23 comes to mind in our lives with all the challenges and celebrations of life. It brings us comfort. It brings us strength. Psalm 23 is a psalm of trust. Trust that in the disasters that we have in our lives, these disasters will pass and all will be well. Psalm 23 became popular in church circles in the late 1920s when it became a part of the established liturgy of funeral services, offering messages of hope and love. It's amazing how words change through the years, for back in 1920, the liturgy begins, "As the minister meets the corpse, Psalm 23 is read." Can you imagine? I'm so glad they've changed that rubric in the service. Psalm 23. It is the most quoted and memorized scripture in the Old Testament. Countless hymns, solos, instrumentals, choral arrangements have been written using the words of Psalm 23 more than any Old Testament scripture. It's been used as popular songs by people and groups such as Duke Ellington, Mahalia Jackson, Pink Floyd, Patti Smith, and YouTube. When we see movies at a graveside service, at a funeral, you'll hear the words of Psalm 23. Psalm 23 was used when Todd Beamer was a passenger aboard United Airlines Flight 93 when it was hijacked as part of the September 11th attacks on 2001. Beamer and others recited Psalm 23, and then Beamer said those now famous words, "Let's roll." What is it about these simple 6 verses, 57 Hebrew words? Psalm 23 helps us with our relationship with one another and God. It comforts us with familiar words and images like shepherd, green pastures, quiet waters, valleys, rod and staff, table prepared for us, our head anointed with oil, cup overflowing, goodness and mercy, trust. The world in which we live, friends, is dangerous, but God is there to take care of us. Jesus is there to take care of us as he proclaims, I am the good shepherd who lays his life down for us. If we are anxious, Psalm 23 gives us courage that we can overcome our fears. If we are grieving, Psalm 23 offers comfort, and we find our way through the valley of the shadow of death. If our lives are embittered by unpleasant people, Psalm 23 teaches us how to deal with them. If we have gone off the wrong path of life, Psalm 23 tells us that God will lead us on the correct path of life. If the world threatens to tear us down, Psalm 23 says that God will guide us and replenish our souls. If we are obsessed with what we lack, Psalm 23 teaches us gratitude for what we have. If we're led astray, Psalm 23 teaches us that God searches for us and finds us. Much like the parable of the Good Shepherd that Jesus taught his disciples and followers, that there was a shepherd who had 100 sheep and one was lost. And that shepherd did all that shepherd could to find that lost sheep. If we feel alone, Psalm 23 offers us, you, God, thou art with me. And then it ends with the words, surely, not maybe, not sometimes, not when God feels like it, but surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. This past week, in our country, the United States, we passed the 1 million mark of persons who have died from COVID. 1 million people. And I can imagine that in the funeral services that took place, the remembrances, whatever form, shape it would have been, I can imagine that not thousands, not hundreds of thousands, but millions will have heard and will hear the comforting words and trust of Psalm 23. My friends, Psalm 23 is certainly an old friend for each and every one of us, and for that we give thanks. So what I'd like us to do is we are going to say together the best we can. We won't need the words on the screens. We're going to say together the words of the 23rd Psalm, and then we're going to have 1 minute of silence to remember those million persons who have died of COVID, to remember their families, their friends, whoever it may be, because I know that each and every one of us gathered here are part of that loss. So we're going to say Psalm 23 together the best that we can. We can close our eyes while we do this, and then a minute of silence, and then I'll bring us out of the silence to sing our hymn. So let's sit quietly. Let's close our eyes. And Pastor Dave is going to lead us as we say the best we can, the 23rd Psalm, and then a minute of silence, all right? So let's start together. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. O God, hear our prayers as we remember those persons who have been comforted by the words of Psalm 23, an old friend.